Today, we will be sharing important information about New York paid family leave, and this webinar is going to be specifically focused on caring for a family member with a serious health condition. Since its implementation in 2018, paid family leave benefits have been significantly enhanced each year to further improve the lives of working New Yorkers and their families, including providing more time off, more uses for paid family leave, and more financial security. And like Adam said, we are now in our 5th year and it is fully phased in. So just to walk through the agenda for today's presentation again, we are going to start by discussing why we need paid family leave and then cover some of the basics that you need to know, including the 3 original uses of paid family leave, an overview of the benefits, how much it costs, who's eligible, and then the steps that you need to take to request paid family leave for family care. We will review some of the frequently asked questions that we get about this type of leave, and then we'll also discuss new information regarding paid family leave and COVID-19 and point you to some helpful resources. And like Adam said, we should have plenty of time at the end for any questions. And just make sure you submit your questions using the chat function. You can submit them at any time during the presentation, but we will wait until the end to answer those. So let's get started with why do we need paid family leave? For too long, employees have struggled to maintain their jobs when they need to care for a loved one during a specific time of need, whether that's welcoming a new baby, caring for a family member with a serious health condition, or dealing with family pressures when a loved one is deployed abroad on active military service. And more recently, many employees have been challenged by having to quarantine due to COVID-19 or care for a minor dependent child who's subject to a mandatory quarantine or order of isolation. Employees in all of these situations face the stress of losing income when they need to take time off to help their family, and also fear that their job may be gone when the family situation is over. So in response to those needs, New York took action, and in April of 2016, New York paid family leave was signed into law. It is an employee-funded insurance product that helps employees be there for their family when they're most needed. Because of paid family leave, workers across New York no longer have to choose between caring for their loved ones and their jobs because we now have this employee paid insurance to help in these critical times. Paid family leave provides job protected, paid time off so that you can bond with the newly born, adopted, or fostered child, care for a family member with a serious health condition, or assist loved ones when a spouse, domestic partner, child, or parent is called to active military service abroad. Paid family leave also now provides paid time off and job protection so that you can care for yourself or your minor dependent child when under a mandatory order of quarantine or isolation due to COVID-19. The order must be issued by the state of New York, the Department of Health, local board of health, or any government entity duly authorized to issue such order due to COVID-19. And we will go into more detail on these uses later on in the presentation as they are a bit different from the other 3. In addition to paid time off, New York's paid family leave also has very strong employee protections. You are guaranteed to return to the same or a comparable job after taking paid family leave. And what we mean by a comparable job is one that has comparable employment benefits, pay, and other terms and conditions of employment. You are guaranteed continuation of your health insurance while on paid family leave on the same terms as if you had continued to work. If you do contribute to the cost of your health insurance, then you must continue paying your portion of the premium while on leave. And you are also guaranteed protection from discrimination and retaliation. So requesting or taking paid family leave cannot be held against you. So today we are going to focus on paid family leave for caring for a family member with a serious health condition. Having access to paid leave to care for a loved one is really important for a number of reasons. Studies have shown that it increases the quality of care in knowing a loved one is getting excellent care from their family member. It can improve pediatric, medical, and surgical experiences and better management of chronic diseases. It increases personal growth, meaning, and purpose for a caretaker. Hospitalized loved ones who are cared for by a family member may have shorter hospital stays and, with a well-established transition plan, may avoid costly hospital readmissions and emergency room use. While offering paid family leave did not completely eliminate the financial worries of taking time from work, with economic support, it can help to reduce stress by providing the option to spend more time with loved ones. With this type of paid family leave, you can take paid time off to care for a spouse, domestic partner, child, stepchild, parent, parent-in-law, step-parent, grandparent, and grandchild with a serious health condition. And very exciting news, effective January 1st, 2023, siblings will also be included in family members eligible to receive family care under paid family leave. And just to expand on domestic partner, it is defined very broadly under the paid family leave law. So it includes people who are not related by blood in a manner that would bar marriage in New York State and who are dependent on one another for support. So, for example, an employee might be able to show that they're in a domestic partnership by showing that they own property together or have children in common with their partner. A legal relationship is not necessary. And something to keep in mind is that all of these qualifying family members can live outside of New York or even outside of the United States. You can still take paid family leave to care for them as long as you are within close and continuing proximity. So in other words, you are present at the same location as the family member you're caring for during the majority of the paid family leave period. And caring for a family member might include necessary physical care, emotional support, visitation, assistance in treatment, transportation, arranging for a change in care, assistance with essential daily living matters, and personal attendant services. In order to take this type of leave, your family member does have to have a serious health condition, and this is defined as an illness, injury, or condition that requires either inpatient care in a hospital, hospice, or residential healthcare facility, or continuing treatment or supervision by a healthcare provider. And a COVID-19 diagnosis may qualify as a serious health condition. So here are some other examples of conditions that may qualify as a serious health condition. So perhaps you need 1 or more full days to care for your mother when she undergoes chemotherapy, or your spouse or your domestic partner had surgery and they need help recuperating at home, or maybe your child is undergoing treatment for addiction and cannot attend school for a period of time. So these situations are ones that may qualify for paid family leave if a healthcare provider does certify that they are a serious health condition and that paid family leave would be required for you to care for that family member. Since February of 2019, paid family leave also explicitly includes support for organ donors. Former Governor Cuomo signed legislation to expand the paid family leave law's definition of serious health condition to include preparation for and recovery from surgery related to organ or tissue donation, ensuring that those who donate can be cared for by their eligible family members under New York's paid family leave. Non-serious medical conditions such as the common cold or flu, routine dental work, or cosmetic treatments are generally not included. However, if medical complications arise and your family member then meets the guidelines for having a serious health condition, then you may be able to take paid family leave to care for them. Next, let's take a look at the specific benefits that are available to you under paid family leave. And as we mentioned before, it is now fully phased in with benefits at the maximum levels. Paid family leave provides both time off and wage benefits, which were gradually phased in over a 4-year period that started in 2018. At that time, paid family leave provided 8 weeks off at 50% pay up to a cap. Now that it's fully phased in, eligible employees are able to take up to 12 weeks of paid family leave at 67% of their average weekly wage, capped at 67% of the New York State average weekly wage. And an employee's average weekly wage is based on their last 8 weeks of pay prior to taking paid family leave. For 2022, the New York State average weekly wage is $1,594.97. So something that's important to note and keep in mind is that you can take these 12 weeks off all at once, or you can take them intermittently, but it does always have to be in full day increments. To estimate your wage benefit, so how much money you would get if you took paid family leave, you can use the 2022 calculator that's available on the Paid Family Leave website. Paid family leave is fully funded through employee contributions, and each year the Department of Financial Services will set the employee contribution rate to match the cost of coverage. So in 2022, the payroll contribution rate is 0.511% of your gross wages each pay period, and that is capped at an annual maximum of $423.71. If you earn less than the statewide average weekly wage, which is, again, $1,594.97, so if you earn less than that, then you will contribute less than the annual cap, and it'll be consistent with what your actual wages are. And to help you estimate your payroll deduction, we do have a payroll deduction calculator that's available on the Paid Family Leave website. Just to summarize those updates for 2022, the maximum weekly benefit increased from $971.61 in 2021 to $1,068.38 in 2022. And then as of January 1st, 2022, employers may continue deducting at the rate of 0.511% of an employee's gross wages each pay period. And again, that is capped at an annual maximum of $423.71. The contribution rate is the same as it was in 2021, but the annual cap is different. In 2021, the annual cap was $385.84. So now that we have covered the types of leave, the benefits, and the costs, let's discuss who's covered and who is eligible for paid family leave. So most employees who work for private employers in New York State are covered under paid family leave. If you work for a public employer, your employer may opt into the program. And if you are a public employee represented by a union, you may be covered if paid family leave is collectively bargained. For covered employees, your eligibility for taking paid family leave depends on meeting specific requirements for the amount of time you have worked for your employer. Full-time employees who regularly work 20 or more hours per week are eligible for paid family leave after 26 consecutive weeks of employment with the same employer. Part-time employees, meaning those who work a regular schedule of fewer than 20 hours per week, are eligible after working 175 days, which do not need to be consecutive. And citizenship and/or immigration status is not ever a factor in eligibility. Governor Hochul recently signed an amendment to the workers' compensation law, which expands coverage for domestic workers. Previously, domestic workers were only required to be covered if they worked at least 40 hours per week for their employer. As of January 1st, 2022, domestic workers who are hired directly by a private homeowner and who work 20 or more hours a week for the private homeowner are required to be covered for paid family leave. And then these workers will be eligible for benefits once they have been in employment with that employer for 26 consecutive weeks. Paid family leave coverage is not optional for eligible employees. There are two circumstances where you can waive coverage. The first is if you regularly work 20 or more hours per week, but you will not be in employment for 26 consecutive weeks. So a good example of that is seasonal workers. Maybe you're hired for 3 months in the summer and you're going to work full time, so 40 hours a week, but only 3 months, so you won't be in employment for 26 consecutive weeks. The other time that you can waive coverage is if you work fewer than 20 hours per week and you will not work 175 days in a 52-week period. Even if you meet this criteria to waive coverage, you don't have to. So once you work 175 days, even if it takes you more than a 52-week period, you'd be eligible. But if you wouldn't work those 175 days in a 52-week period, then you do have the option to waive coverage. So if you meet the criteria for waiving coverage, your employer must provide you with a waiver form. We also have one available on the Paid Family Leave website. If you do waive coverage, you will not make contributions and will not be eligible for paid family leave benefits. Employers should keep a copy of your waiver on file. If your schedule changes such that you no longer qualify for a waiver, your waiver will be automatically revoked within 8 weeks of the schedule change. A great example of that would be that seasonal worker that was hired for 3 months in the summer. The employer decides to keep that person on for the remainder of the year. Now they will be in employment for 26 consecutive weeks, so that waiver would be revoked, and the employer could then take paid family leave contributions and also collect any retroactive amounts due. Also keep in mind that an employee can voluntarily revoke a waiver at any time. Next, we are going to cover how to request paid family leave when you need to care for a family member with a serious health condition, as well as how disputes and discrimination issues will be handled. Keep in mind that the maximum paid family leave benefit, so 12 weeks, is only available to you once every 52-week period. When you're ready to request leave to care for a family member with a serious health condition, there are 3 basic steps. The first one is to notify your employer. If you know when the leave is going to start, notify your employer at least 30 days before the start of your leave. If it's not a foreseeable leave, then make sure you notify your employer as soon as you possibly can. Step 2 is to complete the request forms. Step 3 is to send all of the required forms to the insurance carrier. The insurance carrier must then pay or deny your request within 18 calendar days of receiving the completed request, or the first day of leave, whichever is later. You must submit your completed request package to your employer's insurance carrier within 30 days after the start of your leave to avoid losing benefits. So for the notice, you're giving notice 30 days before the leave, and then when you're sending your forms to the insurance carrier, those have to be sent within 30 days after the first day of your leave. So we're just going to walk through those 3 steps a little bit more in depth and give you some more information. So the first step, again, is to inform your employer. Make sure you let them know at least 30 days before your leave will start if it is a foreseeable leave. So for example, you may be planning to take paid family leave if a family member is in treatment for cancer or recovering from a restorative surgery. If you need to take care of your family member unexpectedly, so it's not a planned thing like a treatment or a surgery, and 30 days notice isn't possible because of a sudden illness or injury, then just notify your employer as soon as you possibly can. Step 2, again, is to complete the required paid family leave request forms, and we're going to walk through how you would complete the request form to care for a family member with a serious health condition. So there are 3 forms for this type of leave. The first one is the request for paid family leave, or form PFL-1. This gives your insurance company information about you. So you'll also need to provide the insurer proof that you have a family member in need of care. To do that, your family member will need to fill out a release of personal health information. That is Form PFL1, and that's so that the healthcare provider can provide the needed proof. And then the third form is the healthcare provider certification. This is Form PFL4, and this is what the healthcare provider is going to use to confirm that you're taking leave to care for a sick family member. You can get these paid family leave request forms from your employer, your employer's insurance carrier, or directly from our website, which is paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/forms. Okay, so looking at the request for paid family leave, Form PFL1, every employee who is requesting paid family leave starts with this form. It asks for basic information about you and the leave you want to take, and it has a section for your employer to complete as well. So you will submit this form to your employer's insurance carrier along with the other completed forms for the type of leave that you're taking. This form has two parts, a Part A and a Part B. You as the employee are responsible for filling out Part A, and then your employer is responsible for filling out Part B. So you complete Part A, and then you give it to your employer to do Part B. The first section of Part A covers your personal information, including your address, your social security number or tax identification number, and your date of birth. And then you also state why you are requesting the leave and how the family member it pertains to is related to you. Next, you'll indicate if you expect your leave to be a continuous period or intermittent. You may not know all of the dates for certain, and that's okay. So you'll see that there's a little box that says dates are estimated. So you'll just check that and then just keep in contact with your insurance carrier if a change is needed to the dates. And then finally, at the end of Part A, you provide information about your employment, including your employer's location and phone number, your date of hire, your gross average weekly wage, and whether or not you have more than one employer if you are taking paid family leave from more than one employer. So just indicate there whether you'll be doing that, and then if you are currently receiving workers' compensation lost wage benefits. One of the most important parts is to then sign and date Part A of the form and give it to your employer, who will then complete Part B of the form. And before you give this form to your employer, just make sure that you make a copy of it, just in case something happens, your employer misplaces it, they don't give it back to you. You just want to make sure you have a copy of the completed form. Once you give it to your employer, they then have 3 business days to fill out Part B of the form and return it back to you. If for some reason they do not return the form within the 3 business days, you can continue on with your request for paid family leave, and the insurance carrier cannot deny your request solely because the employer did not complete their portion. So as I mentioned briefly before, your family member will need to complete a release of personal health information, which is Form PFL3. This is so that their healthcare provider can give you the information and proof that you need, showing that they need your care. You will be asked to provide your name, your family member's name, and date of birth. And this information is required at the top of both pages of the form, just so that your insurer can match pages if for some reason they get separated. Next, your family member or their authorized representative will complete the rest of the release of personal health information, which gives your family member's healthcare provider permission to release the necessary information about your family member's serious health condition and their need for care. If your family member can't fill out the form on their own and has an authorized representative do it, just make sure that they attach a copy of legal documentation, such as a healthcare proxy or power of attorney, to show that they are allowed to sign on your family member's behalf. Next, you will fill out the healthcare provider certification, Form PFL4. On here, you need to provide information including your name, address, date of birth, and social security number, as well as your family member's name and date of birth. This information is provided so that the healthcare provider can find the patient's files and complete the form. You'll be asked to provide your name and date of birth, as well as your family member's name and date of birth on the top of the second page of this form as well. You then need to provide Form PFL-4 along with Form PFL-3, which, as a reminder, is the health release form, to your family member's healthcare provider. The healthcare provider is going to keep Form PFL-3, that release. They're going to keep that for their own records. It automatically ends after 1 year, or it'll end earlier if your family member revokes it. The healthcare provider will then complete the rest of Form PFL-4 and return it to you. So what you'll get back from the healthcare provider is just PFL-4. You will not get the PFL-3 back because that was just the release so that the provider could complete the PFL-4. The third step is to send all of the forms to your employer's insurance carrier. Before submitting your forms, again, just make sure that you make a copy of both the PFL-1 and the PFL-4 for your own records. You will submit these forms to the carrier or directly to your employer if they are an approved self-insured employer. The address of where you should be sending the form should be found on the PFL-1 form in Part B, which is the employer section, question 13. So that should have all of the contact information for your insurance carrier. If the carrier's address is not on the form for whatever reason, you can ask your employer the contact information. There should be a poster in your workplace with the information, or you can always contact the Paid Family Leave Helpline at 844-337-6303 for assistance. And then again, the insurance carrier must pay or deny within 18 calendar days of receiving your completed request, or within 18 calendar days of the first day of leave, whichever is later. If for some reason your paid family leave request is denied, or you have another claim-related dispute, such as you disagree with the amount of benefits, or the carrier didn't make a decision within 18 calendar days, you can request to have the denial or your dispute reviewed by a neutral arbitrator. Your insurance carrier or your employer, if they are an approved self-insured employer, will notify you of the reason for denial and provide you with information about requesting arbitration. Arbitration for paid family leave is handled by NAM, National Arbitration and Mediation, and you can find more information on arbitration at NAM's website. As I mentioned earlier, your employer may not discriminate against you for requesting or taking paid family leave, and you are guaranteed job protection with the same or a comparable job upon return from paid family leave. If your employer does not return you to your same or comparable job, terminates you, reduces your pay and or benefits, or disciplines you in any way as a result of you requesting or taking paid family leave, then you can file a discrimination claim with the Workers' Compensation Board. An administrative law judge may order an employer to reinstate an employee, pay any lost wages, pay attorney's fees, and pay up to $500 in penalties. The full discrimination process and all of the forms are available on the Paid Family Leave website, which is paidfamilyleave.ny.gov, or you can call the Paid Family Leave Helpline for assistance. That number again is 844-337-6303. There are a few frequently asked questions about paid family leave and other policies that might be helpful for you to know, so we're going to walk through those now. We get asked frequently, how are New York's paid family leave and the federal FMLA similar? And there are a lot of similarities between the two benefits. They both provide leave for bonding with a child, caring for a family member with a serious health condition, and assisting when a family member is deployed on active military service abroad. And you are also guaranteed that you'll return to the same or comparable position, and that your health insurance will continue on the same terms as if you had continued to work. And then just a reminder about the health insurance, if you contribute to the cost, you have to continue doing so while you're on leave. However, there are a number of key differences between the two. A big one being that New York's paid family leave is paid, FMLA is not paid. Almost all private employers in New York will have to have paid family leave insurance. FMLA is a little bit different. It's not an insurance product, and it does have a 50 employee threshold for eligibility. The length of time that you have to work is a little bit different. So, as a review for paid family leave, if you work 20 or more hours per week, then you have to be in employment for 26 consecutive weeks. If you work fewer than 20 hours per week, you have to work 175 days for the same employer. For FMLA, you must have worked for a full year and 1,250 hours in the last 52 weeks to qualify. Another really big distinction is that under New York's paid family leave, you can't take leave to care for your own serious health condition, whereas under FMLA, you are permitted to do that. Another big one is that paid family leave can only be taken in full day increments. FMLA, you can take hourly. And then under paid family leave, you do not have to use your other paid time off first before using the benefit. So if I have a sick family member in another country, what do I need to do? I mentioned before that it doesn't matter if your family member lives outside of New York State or even outside of the country. You can take paid family leave to care for your family member as long as you're in close and continuing proximity to the family member during the majority of the paid family leave period. And this does include time needed to travel to the family member receiving care, travel to bring them back to New York, travel to secure their medication, or other arrangements for their care. So if your family member is out of the country, you do need to go out of the country to be with your family member. It's not enough for you to stay in New York and make phone calls from here. You would have to go to your family member. And healthcare providers outside of New York, including outside of the United States, who are completing the medical certification, must have a valid license in the state or country where they practice. If the medical certification is in another language, you do not have a responsibility to translate it before sending it to the carrier. So you can leave things untranslated, and it's the carrier's responsibility to get those documents translated. Another question that we get a lot is what is needed to demonstrate a domestic partnership? Again, you do not need to have a registered domestic partnership to take paid family leave for a domestic partner. The definition in the law is very broad, and there are a number of factors that are looked at when determining whether a domestic partnership exists. And these include, but are not limited to, common ownership of property, children in common, signs of intent to marry, shared budgeting, and the length of the personal relationship. If you do have specific questions about what documentation you might need to submit to demonstrate a domestic partnership, just reach out to your employer's paid family leave insurance carrier and they'll let you know. Another big question is, what if I can't get my medical certification in on time? So we went over before that you have 30 days from the beginning of your leave to submit your completed request without losing benefits. If you can't get your documentation to support a leave request within this time frame, then the insurance carrier can deny the request. You can always reapply once you receive the supporting documentation for submitting your completed paid family leave request. If your carrier does deny a request, remember that you can appeal that decision by requesting review with the neutral arbitrator, National Arbitration Mediation. If you started your leave before the carrier made a determination and you have since been denied, you are not considered to be on paid family leave because your request was denied. So it will be up to your employer to determine how to treat any time off that you've already taken. But do keep in mind that your employer is prohibited from discriminating or retaliating against you, not only for taking paid family leave, but also for requesting it. As I touched on earlier, there are 2 additional uses of paid family leave that took effect under emergency legislation signed in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The legislation allows for a combination of New York paid family leave and disability benefits if you are under an order of mandatory or precautionary quarantine or isolation due to COVID-19. Something to keep in mind is this is the only time you may receive paid family leave and disability benefits at the same time. Typically, you cannot receive those benefits at the same time. For example, if you give birth, you cannot use disability and paid family leave at the same time. You would have to use one and then the other. So for your own order of quarantine or isolation, it is the only time that you can use paid family leave and disability at the same time. And then also the legislation gives you access to paid family leave if your minor dependent child is under an order of mandatory or precautionary quarantine or isolation due to COVID-19. So walking through the benefits that are available for your own order of quarantine or isolation, the way that the benefits work vary depending on the size of your employer. So I'm just going to walk through the different employer sizes. So most employees who work for an employer with 10 or fewer employees that had a business net annual income of less than $1 million last year can use a combination of paid family leave and disability benefits. So you might be eligible to receive your full paid family leave benefit up to $840.70 a week. You'll notice that this is a little bit lower than the paid family leave benefit for the other types of leave. It's not a mistake on the slide. It's just still $840.70 for COVID leave. So once you receive your full paid family leave benefit, you would then receive disability benefits up to your full wages, capped at a maximum disability benefit of $2,043.92 a week. So that gives you a total maximum benefit that you can receive for your own order of quarantine or isolation of $2,884.62 a week. There's no waiting period for these benefits, and you will have job protection for the duration of the quarantine. For most employees who work for an employer with 11 to 99 employees, and then also employees who work for smaller employers with a business net annual income greater than $1 million in the previous year, your employer is required to provide at least 5 days of COVID-19 paid sick leave. So first, if you're under an order of quarantine or isolation, first you would have 5 days of paid sick leave provided by your employer. Then, if you're still under an order of quarantine or isolation, you may be able to use that same combination of paid family leave and disability benefits that we talked about in the previous slide. Again, there is no waiting period for either benefit, and you will have job protection for the duration of the quarantine. For most employees who work for an employer with 100 or more employees, as well as all public employees, your employer is required to provide at least 14 days of COVID-19 paid sick leave if you are under an order of quarantine or isolation. And this should cover the entire period of any order of quarantine or isolation that you are under. You'll notice that if you work for an employer of this size or a public employer, you do not have those combined paid family leave and disability benefits available to you. The benefit available to you is the paid sick leave through your employer. And you will have job protection for the duration of the quarantine as well. And then if your minor dependent child is under an order of quarantine or isolation, eligible employees can request paid family leave to care for them, and you'd be eligible to receive 67% of your pay up to a maximum weekly benefit of $840.70. So you'll notice again that this is the same COVID benefit that's a little bit lower than the regular paid family leave benefits. More detailed information about taking paid family leave for your quarantine or your child's can be found at paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/COVID-19. There you'll also find information about New York State COVID-19 paid sick leave requirements, frequently asked questions, application forms, and more. As you start to think about how paid family leave may be able to help you and your family, there are a number of resources available to assist you. I really encourage everyone to visit the paid family leave website, which again is paidfamilyleave.ny.gov. On there, we have a ton of resources, including paid family leave request forms and fact sheets. We have the weekly deduction and benefit calculators, and we have information about the COVID-19 quarantine leave benefits. You can also contact the Paid Family Leave Helpline, which is open Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And that phone number is 844-337-6303. And then if you're not already subscribed for email updates on paid family leave, including information on upcoming webinars, you can subscribe by clicking Get Updates on the bottom of the paidfamilyleave.ny.gov homepage. So thank you everyone so much for your patience at the beginning of this presentation, and also for tuning in and learning about paid family leave and giving me the opportunity to discuss our landmark program. Before we take questions, I will turn it back over to Adam, and just keep in mind when you are submitting your questions that I can't provide any legal advice. So if you have a question about a very specific situation and what you should do in that situation, I won't be able to answer that. I can answer general questions about paid family leave. So turn it back over to Adam quickly. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Quinn. Yeah, we have about 15 minutes or so to take any questions you may have, so I don't want to waste too much time. Just remember to put your questions in the chat, and Quinn and I will review them. There may be some brief periods of silence as we review the questions for answers, so please bear with us there. And again, I just want to reiterate, we will be providing you with resources for this presentation, including a recording and a copy of the slide. Just make sure you are signed up for email notifications as you see on the screen here. Just go to the Paid Family Leave website and select the Get Updates button. So with that, Quinn and I are going to take a minute to review some of the questions that have come in, and we'll be back with you shortly. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. I'm going to jump right in since we only have 15 minutes. The first question is, can you discuss how paid family leave works for those who have two eligible employers? That's a great question. So if you have more than one employer that you work for and you are eligible for paid family leave from both of your employers, you can take paid family leave from both of your employers. So the request forms are going to be totally separate. You'll apply separately to each employer's insurance carrier. It's possible that they'll have a different insurance carrier. So just make sure that you keep straight which insurance carrier is for which employer. And then your average weekly wage will also be calculated separately per employer. So employer A, they'll use the last 8 weeks of your wages with employer A to calculate your average weekly wage. And then same thing with employer B. They'll only use the last 8 weeks of your wages with employer B. Keep in mind that if you are going to take paid family leave from one employer, you do need to take it from the other employer at the same time, or else you can't take it for that same event later from that employer. So let's say today I was going to take paid family leave for bonding from employer A. I can't later take paid family leave for bonding from employer B. I'd have to take it at the same time. So do keep that in mind, and also keep in mind that the 12 weeks of paid family leave is the maximum in a 52-week period across all employers. It looks like the next question is, if your parent is in a rehab facility or long-term care facility, would that qualify for paid family leave? So it wouldn't prevent you from taking paid family leave. Remember that for family care, the family member does have to have a serious health condition. So as long as the family member has a serious health condition and a healthcare provider certifies that they do have a serious health condition and need care, you would be able to take paid family leave for them. It's not going to prevent you from taking leave just because they are in a facility. And this is another question about multiple employers. So what is the maximum benefit for employees with more than one job? So the maximum benefit is, it's not a combined benefit, so it's per employer. So you could receive the maximum paid family leave benefit, which is $1,068 for each employer. So from employer A, you could get up to $1,068, and from employer B, you could get up to $1,068, depending on what your average weekly wage is. Next question is, what if the care for a family member only requires a few hours of time because maybe you have to accompany them to an appointment, can I still take a full day of paid family leave since 1 day is the minimum increment? And the answer is yes. So you can't take paid family leave in hourly increments. So if you needed a day to take a family member to an appointment, then you'd be able to take 1 full day for that appointment. Next question is the 67% of your average weekly wage calculated from the gross wages or the net wages? It is calculated from your gross wages. Going back to taking a full day of paid family leave, the next question is why does it have to be full days? Many employees who need to care for a loved one may only need a half day and not a full day. And the reason is that that's just what's in the law. So we can't change that rule unless there is an amendment to the legislation. The next question is on eligibility. Does someone need 26 consecutive weeks of employment with the same employer and also need to be making contributions during that 26-week period, or do they just need to have the 26 weeks of employment? So some employers may choose to pay the paid family leave contribution on behalf of their employees. So the requirement isn't 26 weeks of contributions. The requirement is 26 weeks of employment. The next question is, can my employer or insurance carrier deny my foreseeable leave if I don't notify them within 30 days? So if you don't provide your employer with 30 days advance notice of a foreseeable event, and the employer does notify the insurance carrier, then they can deny some or all of your claim for failure to give notice. So it's really important that you do provide notice to your employer. Next question is, if I am the person requesting leave, can I also sign the release of health information on my parents' behalf if I'm the power of attorney? And the answer is yes. Next question is about COVID-19 quarantine leave. Is the New York State affidavit of quarantine isolation considered to be a mandatory or precautionary order? If you are referring to the one that the New York State Department of Health has online where you can go and complete it yourself, then yes, that does meet the requirements for a order of quarantine or isolation. Okay, next question, again about COVID leave, is if a public employer has not opted into paid family leave, must they still offer the 14 days of paid sick leave for COVID-19? And the answer is yes. So the COVID-19 leave, that was legislation that was passed in March of 2020. And in that legislation, it did have that public employers have to provide the 14 days of COVID-19 paid sick leave. It's separate from paid family leave. So even if you didn't opt into paid family leave, you would still have to give those 14 days of COVID-19 paid sick leave. The next question is, I have employees from different states. Do they still qualify for paid family leave? My business is New York based, but it sounds like employees are working from other states. So to be eligible for paid family leave, you have to be in employment. And part of that definition does require that you be localized in New York. So it's based on where you're working, not where you're living. So you need to be working in New York. So that's why, someone could live in New Jersey, but if they commute into New York City every day and are working in New York City, then they would be covered. If someone is exclusively working from another state and not coming into New York at all, then they are not covered for paid family leave because they're not in employment. As far as bonding with a new baby, is bonding considered foreseeable? Sometimes, right? So you might know approximately when you're going to go out for bonding leave, and so you could give your employer, notice that it will be an estimated time frame. And then obviously if there are changes because things happen, just give your employer notice as soon as you can when you do know exact dates. Next question is, if an employee contracts COVID and has complications, will they file under PFL COVID or under regular disability? So all of the COVID benefits that I talked about today are only available if an employee is under an order of quarantine or isolation, or if the employee's minor dependent child is under an order of quarantine or isolation. So they are strictly quarantine benefits. If someone is having complications because of COVID, maybe they're not under quarantine anymore, but they have like the long-term health effects of COVID, that would be a short-term disability claim, totally separate from the benefits that we were talking about today. The next question is the employer responsible for filing the disability paperwork to insurance company for an employee along with PFL? I think you're talking about the COVID quarantine benefits when you have the PFL and disability at the same time. So on the request form for that benefit, it's all on one form. So there aren't two separate forms. You don't have to go fill out the disability form too. We've put it all on one form to make it easier. Next question is, if an employer has more than 100 employees and is already offering paid sick time, are they still obligated to offer the 14 COVID-19 paid sick days? The answer is yes. So the COVID-19 paid sick leave days are separate from any other paid sick leave or accruals that the employer might offer. And the next question sort of ties into that. An employer told someone that the COVID quarantine leave comes out of PTO. Is that correct? No. So it should not be, none of your accruals are being used. This is a completely separate leave than any other leave your employer might provide. There is a question about W-2s. If an employer pays for the disability and paid family leave on behalf of the employees, so the contributions don't show on the employee's W-2, are there any additional requirements that the employer needs to do? I am not by any means a tax expert, so that question you should direct to the Department of Taxation and Finance, and they will let you know if there's anything else that you need to do for reporting that. The next question is, if an employee is receiving retroactive payments for DB and PFL, are those payments then made at the same time, since you cannot take both types of leave concurrently with the exception of COVID leave? So I think maybe you're talking about when someone gives birth and they take disability and then they take PFL, and then maybe the payment comes in a little bit later and it's paying retroactive to when the leave was taken. That's okay. There's no prohibition on the employee receiving those payments at the same time. It's just they can't take the leave at the same time. So they would have to take one first and then the other.
All right, thank you, Quinn. That appears to be all the questions we have. I just want to reiterate, we will be providing you with a copy of the slide deck as well as a recorded version of this webinar on our YouTube page. You can go to youtube.com and just type in New York State Workers' Compensation Board into the search bar, and we'll let you know when that's available. And but until then, you can view previously recorded webinars on our YouTube page, so we strongly encourage you to check that out. I do also want you to become aware of upcoming webinars we have for taking PFL for military leave and to bond with a newborn, fostered, or adopted child. Those will be happening in May, so if you or someone you know may be interested in learning more about those, you can visit the Paid Family Leave website on your screen, paidfamilyleave.ny.gov. Search for the webinars, and you'll see the dates that those will be being held, and you can add them right to your calendar. As Quinn and I had mentioned before, you can also sign up to receive Paid Family Leave news, including information on future webinars, straight to your inbox. To sign up, just visit the Paid Family Leave website. Scroll down to the bottom of the homepage and select the Get Updates button. We do also distribute information via social media, so please be sure you're following the Workers' Compensation Board on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.